Classic gray versus pale oak. Two Benjamin Moore colors that are seemingly quite similar, but are different enough to frustrate a lot of people during the color selection process. We're going to do our best to break things down for you, and hopefully by the end of the video, you'll be able to not only decipher the differences between the two, but hopefully finally make a decision on one over the other. This color clash was inspired by a woman that we've been recently assisting in the color selection process by being her personal design guide, and she was able to narrow down her color choices from 6 to 2. It might have been a lot more than 6 at one point, but the colors that I ended up seeing was just a list of 6. She was able to then narrow it down to classic gray and pale oak, but was unsure which way to go. I'm not at all surprised that not only were pale oak and classic gray the finalists, but picking between the two is just such a difficult task altogether. Comment below if you feel you would get some value from a design guide from the team at the Paint People, and we can help you out with your personal projects. It's something we want to roll out very soon, so keep tabs. These two Benjamin Moore colors both belong in the light, warm grayish category of colors, which is immensely popular for a number of reasons. They both can be found in the Benjamin Moore OC or off-white collection of colors, which aren't all necessarily white, but they do tend to be lighter in general. When we break down different aspects of colors, especially neutrals, we want to focus in on the color's value, or light reflectance value to be more specific, as well as its undertones. This is where we start to see some of the differences between these two colors. The biggest difference for me is that LRV, where pale oak is right around 69 and classic gray 74. This 5% difference in light reflectance value is noticeable enough where you can visibly see it. They're both within that comfortable window of lightness in general, and they'll both feel pretty open and airy when used in larger areas. But pale oak is actually a bit less pale than classic gray, and this could be a detriment in those dimly lit areas of your home because it may not give the desired effect that you're looking for. Also, by being darker, pale oak naturally has more tint or colorant inside of it, which means its undertones are going to be a little more prominent than classic grays. So speaking on that, the big difference in undertones between the two is the fact that classic gray tends to look a little closer to gray and therefore less saturated, while pale oak tends to have more visible beige warmth to it, and it just feels more grayish rather than gray. There also tends to be a bit more taupe present within pale oak, which is probably my favorite aspect of the color, because the taupe color palette is so wonderfully capable of working in many different environments. That's not to say that classic gray doesn't have a bit of taupe as well, it's just extremely subtle in comparison and ends up being a much more passive and canvas-like color. So let's really break things down and see if we can help you decide which of these colors is more suitable for your project. On one end, we have classic gray, which is technically easier to work with because it's not as deep and dark as a color. On the other hand, even though pale oak has that added depth, it also introduces more visible warmth, which can help the color feel nice and cozy rather than cold and industrial. Another option you might have considered is maybe using both colors. Why not dabble with a little pale oak in the areas that incorporate warmer tones, and then use classic gray for the rooms that tend to incorporate more of those cooler leaning tones comparatively? I would probably urge you to stay away from doing that, just because the difference between the two is pretty subtle, and it might actually detract from the overall cohesiveness of your color palette. If you live in an open concept home right now, you already know that even if you use the same color throughout an entire space, I'm talking the exact same color, you'll get a slightly different look from room to room, even wall to wall, in relation to what direction the light's coming from, and also what else is surrounding it. I really think we're nitpicking with these two, to be honest, but I can safely say that if you're looking for more of a clean slate aesthetic and perhaps favor grays over taupes and browns, and you seem to have a pretty moderate, consistent amount of light throughout your space, then classic gray is probably the stronger choice here. But if your area is well lit and you're not worried about having a slightly deeper color on your walls, and you don't mind that you see a bit more beige rather than gray, then pale oak is the superior option. Personally, I'm a fan of working with as much color as you can. By that I mean, try and pick a color that's deep enough where it doesn't completely drown the space in darkness. But going with a lighter color option is sometimes safer, but you don't want to be too safe, or else your walls will simply look like primer rather than your finish coat. Now you get to pick your favorite. Here are our videos on classic gray and pale oak, just in case you want some ideas on color pairings as well as trim colors. Which one's gonna win?